Hello and welcome. Brilliant German director Wolfgang Petersen, who died this month, graduated from acting and directing theatre in Hamburg to directing some of the most spectacular blockbusters of the 1980s. He took over the direction of Das Boot, The Boat, the story of a doomed wartime U-boat and its crew, which went on to win 6 Academy Award nominations, including Best Director and Best Writing. 2 American directors, John Sturgess and Don Siegel, had made attempts in the 70s to shoot the film but withdrew because of the challenges in the script. At the time, Petersen was the most successful TV director in Germany, knew the book, and was appointed director for his first cinema feature. He followed that with the magical fantasy film The Neverending Story, and then the spectacular sci-fi film Enemy Mine, starring Denis Quaid and Lou Gossett Jr. Wolfie, as he was known, was heavily influenced by some of the world's great directors and admired the work of many of Hollywood's most famous actors. When I talked to him shortly after shooting Enemy Mine, he also spoke in detail about his early career, the special effects in his films, and how he also replaced a British director to make Enemy Mine.
I'm just reading quickly through your biography there. When was it your intention, or was it always your intention, to eventually move across to do feature films? Or was it just a kind of a natural progression?
What do you mean feature films? Because I've done feature films all the time.
Well,
what do you mean for the movie?
I mean feature for cinema release, as opposed to TV films.
No, it was like that, I must tell you. I decided to become a film director when I was 11. Really. From the very first moment when I even started to think about everything, about life, and so I wanted to become a film director. And that was I think it was very strange, very surprising for my parents and so, because I grew up in Hamburg. That's the north of Germany.
I've been there, yes.
You know Hamburg?
I do, yes.
So it's not really a city of arts, so it's more an economic center.
Yes, port and stuff, yeah.
Port and ships and so. And also my father was involved in the business with ships and so and all of a sudden I came with the idea, and it was really a very serious idea. I want to become a film director.
Mm. What sort of films had caught your imagination at that stage? American films?
All American films. Mm. That was the 50s in Germany. You know, I was born in 41, so it was beginning of the 50s in Germany, and we more or less just saw American films, all the westerns and adventure films and pirate films and all that. And I was just fascinated by it. I don't know why. There's nothing in the family, no actor or director, nothing in the family, nothing at all. I was so fascinated by it that I decided really to become a film director. And at that time, there was no television, or just the beginning of television, so I've never had in mind something with television. It was film.
But why do you say 11? Why? I mean, was there a particular movie or a movie star that could...
No, I say 11 because that was... I remember that when I was 11, I asked my parents to buy me an 8mm camera to start working, to start making films. And that is for me that moment that I said to my parents, I want to become a film director, and please give me, make me a present, give me a camera, 8mm camera. And they did it. Surprised, but they did it. And that was for me the beginning of that serious idea to become a film director. And I've never changed that, ever. I wanted to do that all of my life. And then later on, when I finished the school and I went to the theater first for 4 or 5 years, because the first thing I wanted to do after the school is now to start working in the film industry. But that was unfortunately exactly that time in Germany, beginning of the 60s in Germany, where the film industry was almost collapsed because of the competition of the television. And the new cinema, the new German cinema at that time wasn't there. It was just that gap in between. So nothing with film. And then I said, well, I go to the theater then, maybe because it's a little bit similar like film. And I started there, and I made my first plays there. I worked very, very early. I think I started with 21 as a director on the stage. And then in '66 opened the film school in Germany, the first one of the two we have now in Berlin. And
when you say opened it, how do you mean? You mean you
started to work at the film school?
It was put into existence though by the government,
yes,
presumably.
Yeah.
And you began there, right?
Yes, I began there, and then I wanted to make all the time just feature films, but exactly at that time when I was at the film school, the first German directors from the young generation, the young German directors like Schlöndorff and Kluge, and so they started to make the first films, and I was so excited about that, and I wrote letters to them and tried to get a job and to be involved with that, and no chance at all. It didn't work at all. They didn't answer. So that was a very depressing situation, and so the film school was over, and then television people came and they had a look at films at the film school, short films there, and they asked me, first they bought my 3 films for a program there, and they asked me if I would like to do a film for television. And instead of sitting around and waiting for the chance to work in the film industry, I said, yes, why not? I do it. Yeah. It's better to start working. And that was the beginning of my television career, because the first film was a very big hit in German television. Very great, big success. And as it is then, then they grab you and they don't let you go, and they offer you more and more and better things. And all of a sudden...
And hopefully more money.
More money, everything. And all of a sudden I was in the middle of a very, strong television director career. And I must tell you, also at that time, the German television was in a very, very good shape. It's not now anymore. It's gone. But especially the early 70s, the late 60s and the early 70s was a great time for German television. And so it was really exciting what we could do there. I've made very, very interesting, I think, and exciting films at that time.
Shot on 16mm or
16mm most of the time.
Right.
And it was really the talk of the nation the next day if you had some interesting film. It was really a great time for television. So it was not so boring for me as I expected earlier. It was really great. It was really good.
And always, I imagine, still influenced by the Americans. There
was a change there. In the 50s, when I was very young, that was the Americans. But then, in the 60s, it was a strong influence by, of course, the French Nouvelle Vague. Truffaut was one of my really heroes that time then. And the Italian movies, and some Polish directors like Skolimowski and Polanski and Andrzej Wajda, and I was very much oriented then to the European scene.
Were you conscious, just before we leave that, the American effect on you? Are there films that sort of stick in your mind as ones that stylistically, perhaps?
You mean in the early?
Yes. Well, throughout the period that you felt that you were influenced by the American cinema. Are there particular films that sort of linger with you as...
Yes, I was a big fan of, for example, of all the John Ford films. I loved westerns, and I was a little cowboy at that time also. I was running around in the neighborhood, with a cowboy hat and with a pistol, with a gun and everything. I was crazy about the westerns. And John Ford was my hero at that time. John Ford films with the singing cowboys and all that. It was just wonderful. I just loved it. And my favorite actor was Gary Cooper, for example, from The Actors. And I was dreaming at that time really to go to the States. And I was really disappointed when I heard as a little boy that all that is past. It was 100 years ago. Today everything is different in the States, because you build up a dream of America, and especially in a country like Germany, where everything was destroyed after the war and so depressing, and such a realistic world in Germany, to build it up again. The parents was just concerned.
Of course, and I think it was Wim Herzog was saying, I met him at the Manila Film Festival. It's a very simple observation, but until it was made, you didn't think of it. But of course, there was no real film culture in Germany as a result of sort of that period up to the end of the, well, sort of from the I suppose the 1932-33 up to the end of World War II.
Mm-hmm.
That's correct, isn't it?
What do you mean? What is?
Well, there was no real film culture. I mean, Lang had in the 20s.
We had this great time of German films in the 20s. You know?
But then when Hitler moved into power, it was
Then, as you know, it was this sort of very dangerous entertainment movies at that time to keep the people quiet, and propaganda films also. And then after the war, that was this time of the 50s where I wasn't, as a young boy, not a fan of these German films at that time. That was the typical escape films, kitsch films, and all that stuff. I didn't like it at all. And that was not a great time. It was very successful, commercially very successful, but not a great time of German movies.
What other American directors might have influenced you? Hitchcock?
Very much so, yeah.
Walsh, Raoul Walsh at all?
Well, yeah, all the great names. I've seen everything, and I loved it, almost everything. But I liked, especially John Ford. I liked very much Hitchcock, the sort of as a enormous, intelligent filmmaker, really, with his tricks to get the audience where he wanted to have it. That was a bit later. When I really understood a bit more about and was more interested in filmmaking itself, how to do it and how to tell stories like that you really grab the audience, and how to set shocks and all that stuff. That was Hitchcock very, very important for me. But first of all, before I was really thinking about the technique of filmmaking, I was a fan of these films and of the westerns, and also this, Errol Flynn and Tyrant Power pirate and adventure movie stories. It had to do also with the young kids, with the boys' dreams of a better world, of a more interesting world. It reminds me very often on Neverending Story, on the little boy escaping in his world of fantasy. That was a little bit the same with me at that time. And you must imagine, especially in Germany, it was such a depressing situation in Germany. It was all just after that, what I haven't seen because I was too young, but after that Hitler area and these very dangerous sort of dream world, all of Germany was to be, wow, Germany all over everything. And then came the war and everything was destroyed. It was a very, very realistic thinking then, just of, getting... Reestablishing, getting built up again, just money and job and everything. It was exactly that world around a young kid to escape out of that and to find your world of dreams. Exactly that time. And the American films, they did it, and books and so, but especially also these sort of films. And yeah, that's what.
And so then the European influence. But what now? I mean, you obviously have your own style, you have your own vision, and so on. But do you find that you sort of look to other films that are made now? I mean, the Lucases and Spielbergs and everything, because you're beginning particularly with Neverending Story. I mean, that lifted you into that not only that level, but that category.
Yes, it has changed now. I think the whole world of filmmaking. It's not the time anymore, and that's a shame. It's not the time anymore for. And even the new German cinema is in a way gone. And the French Nouvelle Vague, as you know, doesn't exist anymore. The Italian cinema is dead. The British film industry is just an industry to help the Americans make films.
But it's growing. I think you have to admit that the British industry is growing.
I hope so. But at the moment, it's sort of all everywhere. It's sort of not a very, very, very good situation for filmmakers. I think it's a great time of the big, great names of filmmakers is at the moment it's a bit over. But I must tell you this. People like Lucas, what then came from in the 70s, from the States with the young Hollywood directors like Coppola and Spielberg and Bogdanovich and Friedkin and Lucas, and so that was a great time. I liked that very much. What came over from them, I know, was again sort of an influence. I must admit that that I think it was very important.
Suddenly getting the opportunity to paint your ideas and your images and tell your stories on a huge canvas after so many years of just doing it on the television set.
It was a surprise, first of all, for me that I was so used that in these years I've made from 1970 to 78 all the time, as you know, these television films, and I had to watch in the Bavaria studios, for example, the Americans working on this boat. You know that they American directors were involved in this boat?
No.
Yeah, quite early. I think from 75 on till 78. Two groups of Americans were involved.
Tried to make the film?
Yes. Yeah.
I had no idea.
They were working for a year or so in Munich.
Who? What director?
John Sturgess was the first director. And the cast was Redford for the commander, yeah. And
did he actually come and shoot any?
No, they hadn't shot, but they prepared everything and they were working on the script, and they were really in heavy pre-production for this boat. At that time, you know, the German cinema was on such a small scale and no money really, and just very little films, either television or little movies. No chance for the Germans to finance a film like that. No chance. And I've read the book and I was really thrilled about it. And I was sort of jealous really to sit there with my little movies and see the Americans, you know, with big money coming up and taking over we don't have too many good stories for big films, and they were there making our films.
So who followed Sturgess in? Who was the other one? The other director?
The next one then was because they had problems with the script and some other problems. I don't know what it was. And then Don Siegel was the next. Don Siegel, and he came up with Paul Newman. That's the commander of that submarine.
And what happened to that?
They had some of the problems. One of the problems was they really didn't know how to get it together technically, how to shoot that, how to manage that, all these heavy storm scenes in the Atlantic, and when the two submarines meet each other, and how to do that, and with that, let's say, a little bit old-fashioned Hollywood style of filmmaking that would have cost a fortune, and how to bring the stars on the sea, and how to bring all the, you know, with helicopters and trailers and the food and everything, I think that was one of the problems. Because
how did you solve that?
I can tell you about that, but just let's go on with that.
Sorry, yeah.
And then, also, I think they have financial problems, so the whole thing collapsed. And then because you asked me what sort of feeling was it then, all of a sudden to have that possibility to work on that level. And then it happened that this Günther Rohrbach, who was at that time the television boss in Cologne, and maybe the most important personality in the 70s as a supporter for the young German directors, on the television side or on the movie side, because movie and television were very close together, co-productions and stuff like that. And I've made all my better films on television for this man in Cologne. And he became the head of the Bavarian studios. And then we had dinner together, and he said then, because he had this problem with the boat and what happened, and he said, would you like to do it? And let's do it in German now. Let us have a try if we can make it. Mm. And first of all, he was thinking of a very quite cheap television series of that for about maybe $3-4 million, and that's it. And then we discussed it further and further, and then we decided to make a really big movie out of that. And you can't imagine at that time with all our little films in Germany, and so we came up with a budget of 25 and later on 30 million Deutschmarks, a German movie, and the press was crazy. They just hated the whole idea. They said it's impossible, you know, such a big budget and only the Americans can do that. And something is wrong is that when they say all of a sudden now we are doing films like Hollywood and big spectacles like Hollywood. And so it has a very, as you know, it has the German tradition in filmmaking is very much in that direction. It's not Hollywood.
That's right.
If you remember Fritz Lang's film, and the early German films were very, very big, also with a lot of special effects and all that, it has a German tradition. It has. But the critics have forgotten that. They just thought of the time after the war and the little, new German cinema films, and so it is. It's important to go back that it has to do also with the German way of making films, of feeling, of thinking in films, and so it has also to do with that big scale, sort of not only Hollywood, it's also in Europe, especially in Germany, it was like that. So then I was so excited about that. After all these years now, that's the first time really to make a big motion picture and a great story, great stuff to do, and everybody else was excited about it. It was a sort of a landmark in German history, filmmaking after the war. Everybody said we were crazy. Nobody believed that we will succeed with that, because first of all, such a budget never happened before. And as you know, a film expensive like that can never make the money back in Germany itself.
No, the same in Australia.
Yeah, the market is much too small.
What was the final budget on it?
It was, including the television, the long version, because it's also a long version of this boat, it was $30 million marks. Yeah. It's not very expensive. You think today it's $10 million. It's not much. But at that time, especially 4 years ago, in Germany, it was enormous. And then they said, you shoot the film in German, then you have to subtitle it and to dub it, and so nobody will really care about that in the other countries. And especially the subject matter, that this is a film about Germans in the war, Nazis. And who cares about that? Who wants to identify, to sit in a submarine together with German soldiers, submariners? So, big risk. And we did it, and as you know, the big surprise then, all over the world, it was a big success and a wonderful experience. And it all started with both of them. All of a sudden, Hollywood called, and they offered me films to do in Hollywood, and same little bit like with Australian directors.
Yes, of course. Time. But can I just get you to tell me just a little bit about how you solved those problems, the physical problems of the U-boats in the water, shooting inside?
We did the following. We decided to go with a front projection technique, not rear projection, but front projection technique. That means, and I wanted to have everything real. Of course, we can't go in a huge heavy storm in the Atlantic and shoot there. Nobody can do that. But what we could do is, and we decided to make it like that. And we said we go into the North Sea. We shoot real storm there. We can't have actors there, of course. But we built a submarine, a miniature of that, but quite a big one. It was about 12 meters long. Quite a big thing for a miniature. We go with that submarine and shoot all the heavy, difficult weather scenes and storm and all that in the real sea, in the North Sea. And we worked 6 months. 6 months just outside on the sea with that boat. And we had, in the bridge of the submarine, we had the captain and all these, and we had miniatures, little model figures like that, 30 centimeters like that, radio controlled. You remember when the boat reaches out, the other boat, it's that small boat, and the people on the bridge, they are just puppets, waving, and we could direct them, from the distance, waving their arms and going down the storm, everything. And we shot that, and later on we combined all that material in the stage with a front projection technique with the actors in the foreground on the bridge with tons of water over them, and combined that. So it was, everything is real, it's real storm, it's not in the bassin, so it's real storm, everything. The only thing technically, the only trick on that is that we had to combine later on with the foreground stuff and the actors.
I guess I better start talking to you about Enemy Mine, or we could be here all day.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd like to talk to you about Neverending Story, but I think maybe one day I might, if you don't mind, give you a call from Australia. Is that okay to call you by telephone? So let's talk.
Just one question.
Yes.
why is Neverending Story such a hit in Australia? Is that a special good work of the distributor there?
Yes, they're very good.
Yeah.
Roadshow are very
because
good.
I'm not surprised, because Neverending Story at the moment is almost everywhere a big hit. Now, I've just heard in Japan, it's just it will end up as one of the 5 biggest films in the history of Japan.
Mm.
But why Australia? Because Australia is so close. In the States, Neverending Story was not a big hit.
No.
It was just so-so.
It was handled extremely well by Roadshow.
Especially in Australia.
Well, firstly, the film itself.
Yeah. But it needs also...
You may accept that.
Yeah, I accept that. In addition to that...
Right, well, then the second thing... Well, the second thing is that Village Roadshow, the company that... Their distribution and exhibition chain, they have a very... They were the ones who backed and handled the Mad Max films.
Uh-huh.
They have a track record of stopping long enough to deal individually with a film and looking at it and saying, you know, what kind of a film is it? What really is the potential market for this film?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it's going to appeal to the kids, but where else can we make it work? How else can we make it work? Let's have a look at the trailer that we've been sent. Is that really going to work for Australia? If it's not, let's maybe add something to it, or perhaps take something more out, but more often than not, add something to it. And then they also made sure that I don't know whether you're aware, but there's, for instance, in Sydney, there's 6 daily newspapers. There's 17 radio stations.
Mm-hmm.
There's 3 commercial television networks. Plus the ABC, which is like a PBS or BBC, and they're very good at utilising those media outlets to involve people in promotions of the film. For instance, my newspaper and a radio station, and I also happen to host a television program as well, a daily movie program. We may all join together with the film company and do a special promotion on the film, whereby each of us gives away a cinema full of tickets, 800 tickets each, to invite the public along. And if we possibly can do it, we'd do interviews. Say, in this case we didn't, but get the interviews. But I mean, for me, it would have been ideal had I been able to telephone you in Munich and talk to you for 10 or 15 minutes on the phone about the film, and then I'd write a long feature story. And all of that sort of moves as a complete marketing plan, if you like.
Yeah, that's interesting.
And also, it was released at the right time. It was released leading up to the school holidays.
Yeah.
Not after the school holidays had started, but a couple of weeks beforehand, when there was a bit of calm and everything, and there was still a lot of media opportunities. So it was good marketing, basically, of a good product.
Yeah, it seems so, yeah.
So Enemy Mine, now you came onto that as a replacement director, didn't you?
Yes.
Replacing
Richard Longcrane.
Right. Why? What was the problem? Why wasn't it working?
Difficult to say. Well, I know what was wrong. Obviously, you could see on the screen. That's what I can tell you about. All the other things, if maybe Longcrane was, we call überfordert in Germany. That means this Enemy Mine is a very extremely difficult film to get together. If you read that screenplay, it's a wonderful screenplay, but if it really comes to the fact that you have to put it on the screen, it's extremely difficult to do that. Because, first of all, it is not just fantasy science fiction like Star Wars, so it's very different from that. It deals with a character, and I think the first time really in history of motion picture, it deals and it shows on the screen an alien being as a complete character in a major part in the film, with exchange of emotions, with dialogue, with everything, but it's not a human. And I can't remember anything, haven't seen anything like that. It's also different from E.T. It's 2-3 steps more than E.T. Because
Why 3 steps? In what ways?
It's an adult. It's really, with Dennis Quaid and Lou Gossett, it's 80% of the film takes place between these two beings Lou Gossett, and it's a relationship character story between two very complex characters. Or let's say it's one step beyond E.T., whatever you want, but it's much more difficult and much more complex than a character like E.T. It looks, the drag, that alien being, looks very different from a human.
In what way?
It is sort of an amphibian-like creature, a little bit like a lizard or a frog or something like that. It's very used to water. It moves very differently from human beings. It, of course, talks their own very strange language. It looks, on the first look, very ugly and unusual for us. Not really like a being or character really with some sort of culture or so. It looks strange. That is also...
Does it have feet, arms?
It has, yes. It has arms, it has feet, it has a head, it has two eyes. And so far it's a special similarity to human beings, but that's all. In other respects, very different. And that is also, that was everyone in the beginning of the film thinks about the drag, especially the main character, especially Dennis Quaid, who is one of the humans in the beginning. That maybe you know that it takes place in about 100 years from now. Yeah. There's peace on Earth, and the humans have to fight against these strange race, the drags in space. And everybody thinks about the drags the same way, that they are toad faces, ugly, without any culture, killers. And that's the issue in the very beginning. And the exciting thing about that is when they meet each other then on that planet, and they are bound to live together in a way, to survive there. And now the really exciting thing takes place, that is the development of that relationship between these two. And then when Dennis Quaid himself develops from a sort of a superficial, just, nice guy or ugly guy or whatever you want, American guy in the beginning, to a great, great, great character at the very end. What he has learned in that relationship through that ugly thing called the drag. This character, to create this character, to make this character, this alien, believable, to give him a look, what is on one hand very unusual and strange, on the other hand believable, and also what gives you the possibility through the film more and more to understand him, to like him, to get a feeling for his personality and everything. It's so, you can imagine that, it's so difficult to put on the screen. Especially if you have to deal with the fact it's not a creature like a Neverending Story with operators and so on. It's Lou Gossett, it's an actor, it's a human being. And you have to make makeup and all that stuff, and it should not
How long did the makeup take? It sounds about day after day.
Well, it's about 2.5 hours to 4 hours every morning. It depends how much of just the face or whole body. So that was the key for the whole film. If that works, and to do that right and believable. And I think in that first version it didn't work.
How much of the film was shot? Had been shot?
3-4 weeks.
3 to 4 weeks, so there was at least almost halfway through.
No. This is a
it's a long
month,
6 months, right?
schedule.
Right. And it was it the design of the film as much as anything else? The design of the look of the drag? There was a problem.
Yeah, it didn't look right. I couldn't believe it, and it was wrong. It didn't work. It was.
So did you bring in your own designer or what?
I brought my whole team. I said we should change everything on the film. I just kept the actors, Dennis Quaid and Lou Gossett, because I thought they were terrific for these parts. But you asked for the reasons. That was one of the reasons I think that the drag didn't work at all. And Iceland, where they shot the film, it did look really like in planet somewhere in space, landscape and everything. And they had problems really to get it all together. They were after a week or 2 weeks, they were a week behind. Nothing works really. It was the whole concept was not was wrong, something didn't work. Or sometimes it is like that. Nothing works.
So what did you use as the setting for the planet? Where did you then shoot?
Well, I asked them, when they asked me to take over the film, I said no, because it's such a difficult thing. I can't just take it over. Like maybe in the States they very often do that like that, but as a European director, I'm not used to do that. I said no. I said the only chance to do that is close the whole thing, forget about everything, give me the chance to do it from scratch again. Forget about everything what you had, all the sets they have built already in Budapest. I don't like anything, and I want to do it from scratch, all over again. I want to do it in the Bavaria studios because I know what I can get there. I've made both there, Neverending Story. Most of my own crew, especially the designer, and I'll keep the two main actors because I like them, and everything else we have to change and push the whole thing back half a year. And they agreed. They agreed to do that.
How much did that mean writing off? How many what would they have spent?
Millions of dollars. I don't know how much really, but was something. But the only chance to get it right is not just to take another week and then go on. No, it really asked for needs a complete new beginning, new concept of everything, and new design. And the new design of the drag, I knew it would take at least 5 to 6 months to get it together with tests and tests and tests. And that was the story, and very, very interesting because I'm very for Europe, for Germany, for Europe, because it's the first time that, and I was really anxious to see will they do that or not, and they did it.
Who did the design of the drag? Your design of the drag?
Chris Wailers, who did. Chris Wailers is from San Francisco.
Right.
It's a group of people, very young people. They did the Gremlins.
Aha.
The monsters, little things
right.
Gremlins. They are very young. A crazy group of people, very talented, enormous. All kids, working on little monsters all the time in this shop. Wonderful. And that's Chris Wailers, his company. And they did it, and we did it all together over a period of 6 months. And this design. And then we decided to go to Lanzarote.
And in Spain?
In Spain, the Canary Islands, for the landscapes, for these volcanic lava-like landscapes. Then we worked together with ILM, with George Lucas Studio in San Francisco, for the matte paintings, for all the different alien, strange-looking skies you never see in the film in our sky, our normal sky here, and created special colors for the whole thing, and especially for the planet. Then we said the only chance is to really that we have to make it in a way to make it look real, that planet, to go 80-90% into the soundstage and make enormous sets, exterior sets in the soundstage to have
day for night,
absolute control over the light, over the colors, over everything. But it has to look real. And that's, as you maybe know, that's very difficult to make big exterior sets, to light it that way, and to get really everything like that. Like you get the feeling it's real, and it's somewhere in exterior. It's not a house or something inside. So I hired then a very good English cameraman for that, who is experienced in big, huge sets and sound stages to light that. We built, the Bavaria Studios built a new sound stage for Enemy Mine, the biggest in Europe for the big sets, just for Enemy Mine. And that's the way we did it, yeah. And it worked. We ended up really on time, on budget, everything. It was a very German-like, well-organized production.
What stage is it at now? Have you got a final cut?
No, we finished about 3 weeks ago with principal photography. So I'm in the middle.
You're in cutting
in the
now.
beginning more of the cutting. We will have.
Do you have an assembly? This stage.
The first cut I will have together mid of July, I think.
But you were very happy, obviously, with the look of it, the color, the style, and everything.
I tell you, I'm very happy. It's difficult to say in the process where it just ended up, but on the other hand, you feel it in your gut somewhere if you have something good or not, and I think it's good.
Are there a lot of sci-fi special effects in it?
Not the typical ones. What takes place in space and battles and so that's in the beginning, a little bit of that, and all the special effects later on, that's mostly what takes place on this planet to demonstrate how hostile and dangerous the life there is, like enormous meteorite showers that come over, hundreds of meteorites banging down on the planet, or enormous monsoon-like rains, then ice storms 10 times as much as a normal snowstorm here on Earth, really ice storms, terrible ice storms.
Who did that for you, ILM?
No, we did that on floor effects on the stage.
Oh, really?
All the meteorites, everything. That's because we needed that big stage to install everything on the roof there. We had, in one take, we had 60 meteorites.
How did you create meteorites?
Well, on very thin wires coming from the roof of the stage. That needs a lot of preparation of days and nights. They had to prepare all these. You can't see these wires going down 60 in one shot. And the actor has to run around between all these things and then.
And what is it actually that comes? How do you fire them? Are they fired?
Yeah, they are fired. They are fired, and there's a sort of an explosion on the floor then when they hit the ground.
So they're so big coming down the wire. How big would the?
You see the flare, when they're going.
Yeah.
Flare, you see, and then you see the explosion on the ground. You don't see the actual meteorites, it's so fast.
Right.
You see the flare coming down,
right.
And then the enormous hit when it hits the ground, explosion.
Right.
Sort of explosion-like thing. Stuff like that, very physical things, in like ice storms and winds and fire winds, where you see all these little pieces of fire flying through the air, and stuff like that. So some creatures also are there on that planet, very dangerous.
What sorts of?
That's called what we call a predator. That's an enormous monster. What is under the ground there, and has this very thin tongue coming out of the ground, and it looks like a plant, like a nice moving plant at the beginning, and all of a sudden it swings down, takes another little creature there. That's where they live or what they eat or so, and then it pulls it down the ground. And under the ground is that monster and eats these little animals. And later on, Dennis Quaid is grabbed by such sort of a vine-like thing and pulled down to the ground. And then the Drax helps him and shoots the tongue. And then the first time in the movie, and that's really a surprise, then the first time you see what's under the ground, this predator comes out. And it's an enormous, big monster. That's some sort of that stuff, like creature, monster stuff. What's there on the planet?
And was that again at Bavaria or ILM?
That's Chris Wader's also.
That's Chris Wader.
Yeah, ILM is more for the optical effects,
right.
like matte paintings and the space,
of course, yes.
Space stuff and motion control stuff. And Chris Wader's was responsible for the monsters and especially for the look of the dread. But all that is there, and it's important for the film, but the real story takes place between these characters.
Of course. Yeah.
That's what it's all about.
Who else is in the film apart from... Because I think I saw the cast list. There are a couple of women in.
Yeah, there's Karen McCormick, a young actress from the States. She is a supporting part. She's the sort of girlfriend of Dennis Quaid in the beginning in that station. But later on, she's not important anymore because then it all takes place between...
It's just the two of them and the life on the...
Yeah, really it takes place between these two.
What was the final budget on
$24 million.
24.
And it was $24 million in the very beginning, and it was $24 million at the very end. We really made it on budget. Very proud about that, because you know how difficult it is in films with all these effects, really to make it for that budget.
I understand Fox have already talked to you about doing another film for them.
Yeah, but at the moment I said I don't want to make any decision before the fall.
You just want to get this one, this one.
I really want to concentrate on this one and keep my head free, and then we see. I've made Neverending Story, and next day, really, I started with Enemy Mine. And two very big films now, right, one after the other. And
you could do with a holiday.
Yeah, especially I'm really so much involved in Enemy Mine now. It's all what I'm thinking about at the moment. And I want to think just about this film. Just to do it every day in the cutting room now, from morning to the evening, all the time, doing this. Because I feel it's worth it. I feel it's worth it now after we shot it, to put all my energy, all my enthusiasm, everything, all my power I have to finish this film.
Right.
I feel that is right to do. If everything works, what I think now, what we have, and if it all works, if it's together as a film, I think when you sit there in the movie house, I think you can't believe that. You don't believe what's going on here, because we have a big secret in all the publicity, all what we're telling about the film. That is that part of the story, about 20 minutes or so of the story, I don't tell about that. Nobody tells about that. You know that we have that sort of secret in that? I must tell you. And, of course, I can't tell you what it is. When I read that in the script the first time, that was what I just said. I could not believe it, that this later on is on the screen like that. That Fox also takes really have the courage to risk that sort of stuff. What happens
in this 20 minutes?
In this 20 minutes, and it's.
Can you give? I don't want to know, but can you tease it and give it?
It has nothing to do with a special, never seen before special effect or so. Nothing at all. It's a story point. It's something what happens there on a very. I cried all the time when I read that in the script. It's something so wonderful, so moving, that and so difficult. When I said, it was for me really the reason I want to make this. I want to see that on the screen, and I want really to take that challenge to bring it on the screen and make it work. Because if that works, it is maybe one of the scenes. And sometimes, as you know, in film, it is like that. A sort of sequence you will never forget. And everybody will talk about that because you haven't seen it like that before. And we have a chance really with that. And that can make Enemy Mine to something really special and different from Star Wars and all the, films, because that is absolute new. And I have the feeling that it worked. I haven't cut it because it's somewhere in the middle of the film, but
it's not at the end of the film.
No, it's in the middle. It's the second half of the film has to do all, and then later has to do with that fact and so. But it is really unusual, very unusual. And what's fine about that, it's enormous emotional thing.
Wolfgang was the son of a German naval officer, hence his great feel for the story of Das Boot. After Enemy Mine, he went on to direct In the Line of Fire, Air Force One, Troy, Outbreak, and The Perfect Storm. He'd moved to California in the late 1980s and died in Brentwood of pancreatic cancer.